Creations of Wonder, Regigigas Ex-Reader by Clan Warrior. As a child, you were always curious as to how the world works. Not necessarily the human world per se, but rather the Pokemon world. At the local library, you often read books on exceptionally powerful and godlike Pokemon known as the Legendaries. True to their name, they performed legendary feats that allowed seemingly simple elements such as time, space, matter, rock, steel, ice, land, and sea to come into existence and shape the world into what it is today. However, there was one particular legendary that always caught your eye. Regigigas, the colossal Pokemon who was said to have towed continents with ropes and shaped three Pokemon that looked like itself with clay, ice, and magma. The books have also said that if a trainer were to come into its temple with those same creations in their team, Regigigas would awaken to challenge them. Of course, all you had was a Ponyta, so you were nowhere near capable of getting three legendaries. But nevertheless, you sought that. One day, you'll find Regigigas' temple to see if the tales you've read were true. "You're such a good girl, Rapidash," you giggled as said fire-type ate a handful of berries from your palm. She smiled and nodded in thanks, nuzzling your cheek. A chuckle escaped from your lips and you rubbed her head. At first, you've always been afraid to touch the horse-like Pokemon's mane as a child, but soon you learn that it never burns someone that the horse-like Pokemon cares for. Thump! All of a sudden, you felt a slight vibration in the ground. Rapidash must have felt it too, as she lifted her head up quickly, eyes wide in confusion. "It's okay, girl," you soothed, rubbing her snout as you stood to your feet and looked around. Then you felt the vibrations again. Thump, thump. "Maybe we should go investigate," you decided. Rapidash nodded in agreement as you hopped onto her back and took hold of the reins you used to guide her. Hearing the thump once more, you steered her around and began to gallop towards the source of the noises. After a while, Rapidash suddenly skidded to a stop and nearly throwing you off as you were looking around you. You let out a yelp of surprise before glaring at her. "Rapidash, what gives? Maybe a warning next time." But when you saw what she was staring at, you became silent in both amazement and utter shock. There, by the blue lake, was Regigigas' towering body itself. You covered your mouth with both hands to contain the squeal that was about to escape. This was the Pokemon you've read stories on throughout your childhood, and yet here it was, in the flesh, before you. But you wondered, what would happen if you approached it? Would it attack you, or summon its golems, or what if there was another earth-shaking thump as you saw the massive creature plop down onto the grass, unaware of your presence, and it seemingly stared into the shimmering blue water. Now a whole new set of questions sprang into your mind. What was it doing? Why did it decide to just sit down like that? But more importantly, wasn't Regigigas usually hostile? If so, why wasn't it going berserk? Did it wake up on its own, or did someone else do it in an attempt to prove their might? Then again, you probably won't get any questions by just standing there, so you hopped off Rapidash and told her to stay still. Despite her protests, the look on your face told her that you could handle it, and so she backed down and let you go. Gulping in slight nervousness, you approached the legendary calmly, before taking a seat next to it. For a few moments you said nothing, worried that you may startle it, but it glanced at you, tensing up at the sight of a human beside it, although it didn't entirely freak out like you were expecting it to. "The water's nice, isn't it?" you finally spoke, trying to start some sort of conversation. Regigigas stared at you for a few moments longer before nodding to your question. "I figured you must have built one of your golems out of ice, right?" No response this time. "Right. Well, I'm glad you didn't totally flip out when you saw me." You chuckled, rubbing the back of your neck sheepishly. "I mean, I've read all kinds of stories about you." "Stories?" You blinked in confusion, looking around. "Did you hear something?" "There's only two of us by this lake, silly child." Looking up at Regigigas, your eyes grew as wide as dish plates and your jaw dropped. "That was you?" The colossal Pokemon nodded. "Didn't you read how legendaries are capable of telepathically communicating with humans and translating Pokemon language?" I was reading about it, but I had to put it down when my parents scolded me for reading instead of listening to them," you muttered shyly, looking down at the ground. The massive creature beside you chuckled. "Ah, humans. How I sometimes miss interacting with them." Regigigas sighed. You glanced back up at it confused. "They only awaken me when they want to battle and capture me when I am weakened." "But isn't that the same with all legendaries, or all Pokemon in general?" you questioned. Regigigas shook its head. That is not always the case. I am naturally awoken when I sense the presence of my golems, but when I do, I realize that they were caught by a trainer. Just to use as mere bait, it growled, clenching its fists. It's awful enough that they allow themselves to be enslaved by such inferior beings who care about nothing but their type advantages and strength. But it's even worse knowing that I am forced to fight them, my precious creations, that are like my own children. You sat there in silence, shocked, yet felt pity towards the legendary. All the stories you've read have told you that Regigigas was nothing but a mindless berserk animal, when in reality it was simply tired of all that fighting. That's why, whenever I wake up in a blinding rage. I'd rather crush my potential challenger than be forced to hurt my golems. It glanced down at you, noticing that you had your hand on its arm. It seemed to relax, as though the touch comforted it somewhat. But I suppose not all humans are obsessed with capturing me. You shrugged in response. Well, you don't even have to worry about me, Reggie. All I have is Rapidash over there. I couldn't even bring myself to fight you if I tried. I understand, child. You have ways to go. By the way, thank you for listening to my story. I know it's not a happy one, but I know what you are really like now, you cut in. You're nothing like they say in the books. Sometimes, pausing, you glance back at the still water. Sometimes just a chat by the water is all it takes. Regigigas nodded in agreement. If you don't mind me asking, where do you think the golems are now? Who knows? I just hope the next time I see them I won't have to. It was then you both heard a large rustle in the bushes. Turning around, you and Regigigas saw three large Pokemon emerging from the darkness of the woods. The moonlight cast a glow on the figures, and you immediately recognized them as Regigigas' golems. Oh my Arceus, you muttered in awe, staring at Regice, Registeel, and Regirock as they stood before you. Regigigas stood up quickly, clenching both of its fists in preparation for a fight, but Regice then cried out to it, seemingly telling it to stop. The colossal Pokemon was still tense, but it didn't attack, thankfully. The trio then carefully approached their creator. You sat there, watching as they communicated in their strange language. The way they were speaking sounded robotic-like. Regigigas then spoke, sounding like a computer system shutting down. Once they were done, Regigigas turned to you. They said that they rebelled against their trainer, smashed their Pokeballs they were kept and freed themselves. Oh, that's wonderful, you exclaimed, unable to contain your excitement any longer as you hopped to your feet and ran to them. I tried to keep my cool, but you guys are my favorite legendaries. You always have been ever since I was a kid. I never thought I'd get to meet any of you in the flesh, but since you are all together now, what happens next? Your smile faded as you looked at the Reggie Quadrant. To be honest, I'm not so sure, Regigigas replied, glancing back at its golems. But from here on out, I'm not letting any of my creations wander out of sight.